As I told you in the last video, the birth of the Olympian Gods was pretty traumatic. Not in the way all births are traumatic, more in the your father starts eating you before you even took your first breath traumatic. As soon as Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon were born, their father, Kronos, swallowed them whole in fear of a prophecy his father gave him. Only the youngest of the six, Zeus, was hidden by his mom until he was old enough to overthrow Kronos and become king of the gods. Zeus then started having fun with other gods, titans, and nymphs. One of them was his cousin, Metis. That's not great, but at least it wasn't his sister. Yet. Zeus had so much fun with her, he married her. Soon after, Metis became pregnant. Zeus was overjoyed. Another god would be born, and since he was king of the gods, he'd love to have someone else to rule over. They spent their days enjoying the feeling of becoming new parents, painting the baby room, picking a new name, and wondering about the gender of the tiny baby god. One day, Zeus went for a walk, and during this walk, the earth, Gaia, began to speak to him. She told him that Metis would birth a girl, which is pretty rude since you can't just go ahead and spoil the gender reveal, but whatever. She also said that after this girl, he would get a son, and he would be stronger and smarter than Zeus himself. This scared him tremendously. His father and grandpa had heard the same thing, and they were both slain by their children. Zeus had just gotten his position as king and would not give it up this easily. He raced back home where he found Metis sitting on the couch weaving while rubbing her growing belly. Zeus was sweaty, wide-eyed, and shaking. Metis tried to sit him down and bring him a glass of water, but Zeus was in a panic and not thinking straight. He took a page out of his father's book, opened his mouth wide, and swallowed his wife whole. Zeus spent some time being a single man, but this started to bore him. He was searching for another pretty woman to make his wife. He soon laid eyes on the prettiest woman he'd ever seen, his sister, Hera. Hera didn't want anything to do with him at first, but got tricked into marrying him. This myth will be for a future video because their wedding was also very interesting. After their marriage, Hera fell pregnant and had a baby boy, Ares. This boy was certainly not more powerful than Zeus and posed him no threat. Zeus didn't like him though, neither did Hera. They mostly ignored the boy. Hera gave birth to two other children, Hebe and Aletheia. Zeus started to get bored of his house life and went out more. Hera didn't like this, but she kept her mouth shut. As Zeus was prowling the streets looking for something or someone to do, he met Leto. Leto was a titaness, the daughter of Chaos and Phoebe. Zeus was immediately stricken by her and decided to strike himself onto her. That was terrible, I'm sorry. What I meant was that they had an affair. Zeus fell in love with her and she quickly became pregnant. When Hera found out, she was outraged. She asked Gaia for help and they cursed Leto so she would never be able to give birth on any land or island seen by the sun. For months, Leto walked around with her growing belly, knowing the kid would never come out. What if she just exploded like a balloon? What if she threw them up like Kronos did? She didn't want vomit on her baby. She spent years walking to every corner of the earth, searching for a way to get that child out of her. Zeus took pity on her and talked to his brother, Poseidon. Poseidon felt bad and would love to see the drama when Hera found out the kid was born, so he helped her. He brought up an island, floating on top of the sea, and made a dome of water over it, so it was not seen by the sun. Hera took notice of the randomly appeared island, and figured Poseidon must have been helping her arch-nemesis. I don't know if she wasn't equally or even more mad at Zeus, but fine. Hera went to her daughter, Aletheia, goddess of childbirth, and kidnapped her, which is a very normal progression of things. Because Aletheia could not help Leto with the birth, and the child was like 8 years old at this point, the birth was impossible. For 9 days and 9 nights, Leto was in labor. Zeus was eventually able to free Aletheia, and consequently, also his child. Leto gave birth to a sweet little girl and named her Artemis, but the labor was long from done. There was another baby trying to claw its way out, but he was stuck. Aletheia got to work immediately and tried her best to help Leto. Artemis, at just a few minutes old, also rolled up her sleeves and helped her mom birth a little boy. He was called Apollo. As a gift to the children, Poseidon bonded the island to the seafloor so it would not float away, and the now holy island Delos stayed in its place to this very day. Zeus never went back to Leto after he had gone to Poseidon. He had made up with Hera and was eventually allowed to take Artemis and Apollo with him to Mount Olympus. They lived happily ever after. Until their first argument, after which Zeus ran out the door for a walk. On his walk, Zeus met a pretty woman named Maia. Maia was dangerous, swift, and had a mischievous grin, making Zeus fall to his knees. Soon a baby boy was born. Maia lay down for a quick nap after putting her baby, Hermes, down in his crib. As soon as her eyes closed and her breath slowed, Hermes climbed out of his crib, ready for an adventure. He crawled out of the cave and found a tiny tortoise making its way across the mountain. Its pretty green shell shining with the reflection of the trees high above it. Its eyes full of life and dreams. The little baby took interest in the tortoise and picked it up before... Oh my god. Are you serious? He did what? Okay, let's just skip ahead a little. Soon Hermes climbed back into his crib with his new toy, which he had called a lyre. He had made it from a empty tortoise shell, to which he had attached 7 strings. A beautiful melody filled the cave, and Maya fell into an even deeper sleep. Who could blame her? She'd just given birth. It's really Zeus's fault for what happens next, since he shouldn't have left Maya to give birth and recover on her own, thus leaving the baby unwatched. After Hermes was done playing with his new lyre, he was bored again. He climbed back out of his crib and went out of the cave once more. He put his tiny feet beneath him and discovered that walking was way faster than crawling. He walked down a mountain and found an open field with grazing cows. These cows were the most beautiful creatures he had ever seen. Probably because he killed the first animal he'd seen a few moments ago and wanted to keep them. As he was rounding up the cattle, the farmer, Badus, who took care of them, walked up to him. He wondered what a tiny baby like Hermes wanted with all these cows. Food. I just want to play with them. Badus explained that his cattle was holy to the god Apollo, but this didn't matter to Hermes. He didn't know Apollo anyway, and besides, he's a god too. He threatened Badus that if he told anyone that he had seen him, his heart would be of stone. With that, Hermes and the cattle left. A few days later, Apollo came by to check on his favorite cattle and found Badus sitting next to an empty field. Badus, where are my cows? Badus refused to tell him anything, but after some light persuasion, he confessed. What could a baby realistically do anyway? Apollo was furious and went to Maya's cave in a rage. Maya stopped him at the door, ordering him to tell her what's going on. Apollo told her that her baby had stolen his cows and Maya laughed at him. A baby couldn't steal cows. Apollo went into the cave and found baby Hermes in his crib eating a big steak. Apollo demanded to know where his cows were. When Hermes denied the accusations, Apollo told him Badus had sold them out. With this, Hermes took him deeper into the cave where he had stashed the cows. Apollo was right in the middle of yelling at the baby when Hermes got bored and started fiddling with his lyre. The sun god became immediately obsessed with the sounds coming from the tortoise shell. He was willing to trade his cattle, and Hermes' punishment, if he could have the lyre. Hermes did not agree with these conditions and wanted more, something more powerful. Apollo had recently slain Python, a huge snake that inhabited the prophetic cave of Delphi and had become the god of prophecies. Hermes was very interested in that. He demanded that Apollo would give him some sort of prophetic power, and he agreed. From now on, Hermes would be the god of all the prophecies, provided they were made using dice. They put the, now Hermes' holy cattle, back in the field, and Apollo took his half-brother with him to the palace on Olympus. Greek mythology is pretty inconsistent with its continuity, since it had been an oral tradition for many years before some idiot finally decided to write it down. This makes it so that it seems like the gods can time travel. There might have been myths about this, like, oh yeah, since they were descendants of Kronos, they can also manipulate time, lol, but that one must have been lost to time. There were also a lot of regions in Greece that all had their own versions of the myth, so bear with me as I try to explain this next mess. Next up, we have the birth of 2 new gods. Remember Metis, Zeus' first pregnant wife that he ate? And not in the good way? Well, since gods are immortal, the baby just kept on growing and growing. Soon, Zeus' stomach became a little too small for the tiny god, and he searched for a bigger, emptier space to grow. So, she settled in Zeus' head. Zeus noticed something was off when he got a splitting headache. In the most wonderful fashion of ancient medicinal practices, he went to another god to get his skull split open. This other god was Hephaestus. You might not have heard of Hephaestus, and that's because he wasn't born yet. This myth probably originated in one part of Greece, and the myth about Hephaestus' birth originated in another part. But we'll talk about him later. All you need to know is that he is the god of blacksmiths. That's why he was qualified to split open his stepfather's skull. Hephaestus grabbed a hammer and screwdriver and put it right on Zeus' forehead. He started hammering into the skull, and forth came a fully grown goddess. I am Athena, she introduced herself, goddess of strategic warfare, crafts, and wisdom. She looked very intimidating with her war tunic and armor. Zeus must have swallowed some of that too. How else could she have gotten it? Remember Ares? No? Don't feel bad, neither did his parents. But he was a bit bummed. He was the god of war. Zeus fell in love, metaphorically, not literally, with his daughter as soon as she threatened Ares to cut off his head if he didn't stop whining about being the real war god, and decided that she was now his favorite. Hera was fuming. How dare he choose a favorite child, and the one with his ex-wife no less. She decided that if Zeus was able to have a child without her, she could as well. And this is where it gets weirder. Hera ate some magical, definitely not drugs, herbs, and became pregnant all on her own. The child that came forth was called Hephaestus. Yes, the same one as that just helped with Athena's birth, but fine. She held the baby boy in her arms and wanted to show him off to Zeus. This is where the myth diverges. In later accounts, people wrote that Zeus tried to get with Hera against her will, and Hephaestus stopped him, so Zeus defenestrated him, and Hephaestus fell for an entire day before landing on the island of Lemnos and shattering both his legs. The Sintians, a native tribe on the island, took care of him and taught him how to be a craftsman. Older accounts, like that of Homer, say that Hera held the baby boy in her hands and saw his legs were fucked up, so she yeeted him out the window herself in an attempt to cover up her mistake. And like, my legs are fucked up too. That's not a reason to throw me off a goddamn mountain. Hephaestus was consistently disabled though, so that kinda sucks for him to be honest. Eventually, Hephaestus made his way back to Olympus, and he brought a gift. He had made a beautiful golden throne for his mother. Hera was smitten with the beauty. The chair had pictures detailing her birth, marriage, and children. She sat down and thanked Hephaestus for the beautiful gift, before ropes sprung from the arm, leg, and back rests, and chained her to the chair. Without saying a word, Hephaestus turned around and went back to Lemnos, leaving his mother stuck in the chair. The other gods tried their best to free their mother, wife, and queen, but no one was able to get her out. Hephaestus was too good. After a long while, Ares was sent down to Lemnos and ordered Hephaestus to come back and free their mother. Without looking up from his tinkering, Hephaestus told him, "I have no mother," which is pretty edgy if I say so myself. Eventually he did return and free Hera on the condition that he was allowed a place in the Olympian Council and marry the most beautiful goddess. Zeus obliged, and Hera was freed. I went pretty quickly over the last two gods, not because they weren't as important, but because their birth myths were short as well. There's plenty of Athena-Ares beef, or Hephaestus' blacksmith stories, or Athena/basically everyone beef to talk about in other videos. The next goddess we'll be talking about is probably one you've already heard of. In the last video, I told you about how Cronus cut off his father Uranus' bits and that his blood and other fluids seeped into the earth and sea. I don't know why these other fluids were present when he was mutilated by his son, but I'm not allowed to kink shame. From these other fluids came a baby. This is normally also the case, but this time Uranus managed it on his own. From these fluids and sea foam came Aphrodite, goddess of love, fertility, and grace. After spending all her life with nymphs and titans, she caught wind of gods assembling on Mount Olympus. She decided to take a look for herself. As soon as she appeared on the mountain, everyone bowed to her. With a bunch of flowers and marriage proposals, she walked into the throne room where the other gods were. Poseidon fell to his knees and proposed to her on the spot. She laughed it off awkwardly. "You already have a wife," Zeus told him. "That's why she should marry me." "You have a wife," Hera retorted, and Zeus sat down angrily. "What good is a wife if you cannot even marry another woman? Am I right, fellas?" "I wouldn't mind marrying her," Ares said, and Aphrodite looked him up and down, considering. Before she could answer, the quiet and reserved Hephaestus spoke for her. He stepped up to her and took her hand. "You are the most beautiful goddess I have ever seen. I want to marry you." Aphrodite could barely keep her eyes away from Ares long enough to actually look at the man kneeling in front of her. She shook her head no, but Zeus declared it was only fair, since he did promise Hephaestus the most beautiful Olympian in exchange for getting his wife free from her throne. And so it came to be that Hephaestus and Aphrodite joined each other in a happy and certainly not one-sided marriage. We have arrived at the last Olympian god, and probably the longest myth yet. It takes place after the humans were made, given life, and settled all over the world. It all starts with a Theban princess named Semele. Semele started having dreams of a fruit tree. In these dreams, Zeus would come down and the fruit tree would disintegrate, but the fruit would survive. Zeus would take care of the fruit, nurture it, and let it grow himself. After a while, Semele started feeling as if she was the tree, as if Zeus would disintegrate her. She took extra care of praying and offering to Zeus, but did such a good job, Zeus did eventually notice her. He came down, disguised as a mortal, and started abandoning his home life entirely, something which infuriated Hera. Zeus told Semele about who he truly was, and how she was the only one for him, how they would marry and she would bear their child. Semele was over the moon and already figuring out what to do with her soon-to-be husband and immortal life. Hera was, understandably, outraged, and terrified that Semele would take over her place as queen of the gods. She went down to earth and disguised herself as a servant, and walked right into the Theban palace. She found Semele eating in the dining room, and introduced herself as a new servant. Since Semele was an ancient Greek princess, and felt too good to speak to the servants, she stood up and left the room. It didn't matter. Hera had already seen her, and made up her mind. As a heavily pregnant Semele walked out of the room, Hera started changing again, this time into a doctor, and knocked upon Semele's bedroom door. A servant let her in, and Semele was combing her hair on her bed, lighted up by a giant skylight. "What a pretty skylight," Hera remarked, and Semele smiled brighter than the sun. "I know, it's so I can always see my fiancé." "Wow, fiancé, huh?" Hera said, trying to control her rage. "Is he a bird or something?" Semele explained that she was soon to be wed to the king of the gods himself, and be made queen. It took a tremendous amount of effort not to smite her right there, but Hera managed it pretty well. "I think that man is lying," Hera said. "You should ask to see his lightning bolts. If he cannot show these to you, he's probably scamming you." Hera returned to Olympus and waited for her plan to unfold. Zeus told his wife that he had a diplomatic mission, but in reality he went back to Semele. Hera expected this. As soon as Semele's bedroom door closed behind him, she asked to see his lightning bolts. Zeus refused, but seeing his fiancée and mother of his child look so sad had changed his mind. What bad could a quick glance do anyway? Well, it turns out, quite a lot. As soon as he took out his lightning bolt, Semele disintegrated from the sheer power alone. Only their baby was left behind. Zeus sliced open his thigh, put the baby in it as if it was a bloody pocket, and sewed himself back up. He returned to Olympus and acted like nothing happened. Of course, Hera had noticed the giant baby-shaped bump on his thigh, but she could only feel glee that her husband was hers alone again. It did not take long before the baby in Zeus's thigh was ready to come out. When he was born, Zeus was terrified of what Hera might do to him, so he put him in the care of Semele's sister Ino and her husband Athamas, the king and queen of Orchomenos. This is where the baby, named Bacchus, grew up disguised as a girl as not to be noticed by his stepmother. We stand a trans king. Bacchus lived a relatively happy life until Hera found him. He cursed his foster father, who went mad and killed Bacchus' brother and then himself, which sounds like a good thing to unpack in therapy. He started living as a boy from then on, since he no longer needed to hide, and changed his name to Dionysus. And same. He fell in love with a satyr named Ampelos. As they were playing in the woods one day, Ampelos started riding a wild bull and insulting the Titaness Selene, which is kind of a bad idea. He was thrown off the bull by aforementioned Titaness and died on impact, hitting a tree. Dionysus was overcome by grief and turned his boyfriend into the first grapevine, turning his blood into wine, which is way cooler than plain old water, Jesus. Then Dionysus started a sex cult, Mood, and traveled all over the known world until he returned to Mount Olympus and was offered a throne. We now have all the Olympian gods together. The Parthenon was made. There are just 2 siblings left out. Hades had his own domain in the underworld, where he is way too busy to be able to partake on Olympus. He does visit sometimes though. Also, Hestia is not part of the Olympians, mostly because she's a drama-free queen and just wants to be close to her family. She gave up her throne so Dionysus could be an Olympian, which is very much loving ant behavior. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and please like and subscribe. I am just starting out and it really helps to get me on a YouTube radar. I want to reiterate again that there are many different versions of the myths, and I'm just a 19-year-old guy sitting in his yard writing the script. There are probably things I've missed and done wrong, so please correct me. Have a lovely day, and hopefully there will not be 6 months until my next video.